So now you see why he was indicted. That you have to earn the opposition. You have to earn the opposition. And Chase Iron Eyes is working every day to earn the honor that he has as having been charged with leading the insurrection against the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was
I'll be right now.
Yeah. So it's a sincere privilege for me to have defended and represented Chase, more represented, because the defense that Chase and I crafted along with the legal team up there was not to take a defensive stand against the state, but an offensive position to point out that the criminals before the bar of justice were not us, that it was the Dakota Access Pipeline, and it was the energy pipeline ownership, the energy corporations that owned them, that came together to form that pipeline corporation. It was, in fact, the Tiger Swan private military corporation that were the criminals there. That prior to their arrival on the scene, Chase Iron Eyes and the other people that were organizing were just peaceful, prayerful, and they were soliciting support from around the country and from around the world, and it was showing up. And that's what inspired them to bring in the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation. And this is a thing that Chase and I want to emphasize to you, that Chase just pointed out. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You know, these people know what they're doing. They've brought in the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation now to stand as a privately hired army, basically to defend the oil corporations. They've been trained and paid for by American tax dollars to train them in special forces, and they've been deployed in the Middle Eastern oil field against the tribal people in the Middle East to seize and control their oil. And they've now been deployed stateside here in North America against the American citizens. And they have designated Chase Iron Eyes as the leader of the religiously, spiritually motivated, indigenous, jihadist terrorists in the United States, because that's their prism. That's how they view reality. They view the indigenous people as threatening their control over the natural resources of the planet, which they view to be exactly coincident with the planet. The planet is nothing but a collective of natural resources for them to develop and bring into their capitalist machinery and to make products to sell. That's how they view the world. You remember the old famous Sufi saying that when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees are his pockets. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a portion of our human family that are so closed to the unitive experience that lies at the heart of the genuine spiritual experience, the actual relegare, the relinking of our separate selves with the rest of our planet that has generated us into life, that relinks us with the universe, with the stars, of which we're made out of the same stuff that at one time resided at the heart of stars. This is a fundamental spiritual unitive relationship. And what we're trying to talk about now at the Romero Institute, which is the 501c3 office, base of the Dakota People's Law Office, that what we're trying to explain is that the fundamental resource that we have at our disposal is the understanding of the love relationship among ourselves and our love relationship with our planet and with the universe that has generated all of us. And this is what the problem is. As Francis said, as Pope Francis said in his encyclical back in June of 2015, the global climate change is fundamentally a function of the spiritual crisis that our human family is in. As Chase pointed out, ever since the so-called Enlightenment, in which materialism and the intellect came to be the dominating quality of our human family, in which you need to understand, intellectus, the Latin root of intellectus is the ability to distinguish the difference between. And when our human family evolved the intellect to be able to experience ourselves at the core as separate and apart from all of the rest of created reality, and rooted the sense of our individual identity in this experience of separateness, that is what is the source of the lust for power and dominance, to try to reestablish their control over the natural world and to dominate it and turn it into means that they can use to assert dominance and power. That's what we're dealing with here. And the indigenous people understand this. The Lakota people understand this. The indigenous people around the world understand this. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today in the short time that Chase and I have here, is that the most fundamental challenge to the progressive movement is not the capitalists. They've been there since the creation of the major stockholder-owned corporations in 1872 at the end of the American Civil War that gave rise to the entire robber baron era. It went on from 1868 to 1898 and culminated in the massive depression in the United States. That group has been there. The challenge that we have is, as a progressive movement, to try to understand the genuine nature of spirit and spirituality, because we're facing the risk of jettisoning the entire value of spirituality because of our bad experience with the Catholic Church. The Lakota people have experienced it with the Catholic Church and the other religious groups. All of our families back in history have experienced it. And because of that, the people have started to reject the actual category of genuine spirituality. And this is a challenge. It was Michael Harrington, the founder of the Democratic Socialist movement, the DSA, the Democratic Socialist of America. He said in his last writings, called Present at God's Funeral, he said, until the American socialist movement comes to understand what the Catholic left understands, we will never come to power in America. And that's what's essential here. That's what we're trying to talk about today. And that was Harrington that was talking about that. So the question that you asked, the puzzled look on your face right now, is what does that mean? What does that mean? What it means is we have to overcome the complete rejection of spirituality with a rejection of all of the abuses of the churches and the religious organizations, whether they be Islamic extremists or whether they be fundamentalists. The fact is that if they can lay claim to being the sole possessors of the spiritual world and we reject it, we are in fact jettisoning one of the most important resources that we have at our disposal. In my opinion, having studied it at some great length, that was the fundamental error of the world socialist movement on the part of the Soviet Union. It in fact moved to a position of absolute aggressive atheism and condemning all spirituality. And when they tried to sell the idea that you could have the same degree of affection for people simply because they were a member of your class, as distinct from having affection for other people because they're fellow human beings, and having affection for other living things because they're your relatives, of having an affection for the planet because it's the source of all life, that if they can succeed in getting you to reject those concepts, they will forever be in charge. They will be forever in charge because they have control over the material realm right now. And if we try to fight them on strictly a materialist basis, appealing to people for their strictly utilitarian self-interest, whether it be as a class or whether it be as a middle class or whether it be the 99% versus the 1%, as long as they can trap us in that dialectic, as long as they can trap us in that, they will have the power because they have more guns, they have more ammunition, they have more tanks, they have more B-52 bombers, etc. But they cannot defeat us if we, in fact, regather that spiritual connection to the earth, to each other, and to be able to see every other person as we see our own child, who, as we all know, we're very forgiving of. Our children do things that cause us to be pulling our hair out, those of us who still have it, but there's always affection there. And so what we have to do, we don't want to fall for being suckers of trying to say, well, just be lovey-dovey with these people and maybe they'll get over it. They're not going to get over it. We've got to get over it. We've got to get over it. We've got to get over this idea that we have to just fight them in the streets. We do not want to have a redo of the 1930s in Germany. And that's exactly what you're looking at right now. This is exactly what you're looking at right now. And so that we have to avoid, in my opinion, in the progressive movement, in the democratic socialist movement in the country, we have to avoid doing that thing that happened in Germany, where we, in fact, retreat into our more and more purist position. They retreat into their more and more authoritarian and reactionary position, and we end up condemning all of the people in the middle, and then the fight takes place. The gunfights take place in the streets. What's in the offing right now, and we all know it in this room, is the fact is that the liberals in the country started to rely upon the Mueller report. Robert Mueller, the Republican, the head of the FBI for George W. Bush, to save us all. Okay, and that they thought, well, even maybe even William Barr, who was the Attorney General for George Bush Sr., who's the one who advised him to give the pardons to all of the people that we got indicted in the Iran-Contra case, who were preparing to testify against Bush Sr., and he just gave them a pardon at the recommendation of William Barr. And people were standing around saying, maybe William Barr is a nice guy, because the Democrats in the Senate voted to approve him. What I'm saying is look at, we cannot rely upon converting the extreme reactionaries. We can't rely upon the regular, moderate, mealy-mouthed Democratic Party to save us. What we have to do is organize. What we have to do is mobilize. What we have to do is conscientize. We have to raise the consciousness of our people. We cannot fight them in the streets and be antagonistic and hostile and coming from an antagonistic and hostile place. We have to come from a place of affection, a place of caring, a place of compassion. And we have to, in every single one of those congressional districts where we're going to remove those moderate Democrats in the primary process is coming up. When we find Democratic congressional representatives who have been in that office every 2 years, winning by 20, 30% in those congressional districts, and still voting with Republicans, still not supporting the Green New Deal, still not supporting the movement against global climate change. Those people have to be removed. We're not here to attack them. What we're here to is to provide a positive alternative. To provide a positive alternative. To lift up the options, to lift up the alternative options, to lift up the alternative candidates, 90% of whom I hope are going to be women in those campaigns, to go up against those guys, because 99% of them are all white men, okay? To go up and present a positive alternative. That's what has to happen here. In the kind of affection and caring for our planet, our affection for caring for each other, and caring even for all the people who are the victims of global climate change. That is what has to motivate us. This is a true understanding of spirituality. It's a true understanding of relegare, the Latin root of relinking ourselves. That is what the indigenous people are trying to share. That's what the indigenous people are trying to talk about. That is what the people were talking about at Standing Rock. But understand, what happened is that the Energy Transfer Partners Corporation, one of the partners of whom was Donald Trump, another one of whom was Rick Perry, his Secretary of Energy, partners in Energy Transfer Partners, that what they did is brought in Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation. You got to understand, this is a direct spinoff of Blackwater International. The founder of Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Reese, was in fact the director for Blackwater International of worldwide anti-terrorism operations. And they spun him off, and he set up the Tiger Swan Private Military Corporation. And these are the people that are hired. Blackwater International right now has battalion-sized military units. They have fighter jets. They have fighter jets now. And these are private militaries now that are being hired by the corporations. And the corporations, as you know, are going through the state legislatures now and getting one statute after another passed, making it a felony act even to step onto the property if there is in fact a sensitive infrastructure construction going on. So that they can, all you have to do is touch a foot on that property and they'll arrest you in a felony and put you in prison. They've passed statutes now, what they call boosting rioting in the state of South Dakota, where Chase is right now. They passed it in the legislature that if in fact you go on the internet and participate in recruiting anybody to go to actively participate in a protest against a pipeline, that is a felony crime in the state of South Dakota, and they can sue you privately and draw you into their state because they have a civil cause of action where they can file the civil cause of action against you and get you served in your hometown and bring the civil action against you in the state of South Dakota and then fine you for every single penny that's spent by the corporations to try to get their pipeline put through. And if you interfere with them, they're going to fine you for that money and give the money to the pipeline. Okay, we need to understand that the tools that they have at their disposal are not the tools that we have control over. They are right now in the process, Donald Trump is in the process, as we sit here today, appointing 236 new federal judges. 236 new federal judges. And they're feathering them in all across the federal system in the country. So those courts of appeals, where they don't yet have complete control over the majority of the members of the courts of appeals, they are focusing on those circuit courts. They have now appointed designated five new federal judges for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals here in California. 5 new federal judges, okay? And they've now appointed 44 new federal Court of Appeals judges around the country. You need to understand, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Don't think that we're going to be able to talk them out of doing what they're doing. And don't think that we're going to be able to talk the present moderate Democrats into really doing anything about it. Because all they're going to do is everybody here should know, if you don't know by this time, they're getting ready to nominate Joe Biden. And he's going to have as his vice president Kamala Harris. And they're going to come in, and the motto, which they're going to put on the back of bumpers of everybody's Suburban, is, let's get back to normal. Let's get back to normal. Our motto's got to be, let's not get back to normal. Let's not get back to normal. We've got to go to a higher place. We've got to go to a higher place. Bernie Sanders and the progressives, with Elizabeth Warren, the other candidates that are going to be calling for radical change, profound change in our economic system. This is what we have to be supportive of. And we have to mobilize. It's not going to be easy. Just coming together today, and as important as today is, and gathering and starting to organize, is just the very beginning. Just the very beginning. We've got to fan out across the country over the next 2-year period. We've got to fan out across the country. We've got to get every relative that we know, every friend that we know, every high school person that we went to high school with, every college person we went to college with. We've got to get there and help them organize and help them conscientize their people. And we've got to come to grips with understanding what the spiritual realm is. There is a subtle realm. And I won't go into great length about this since I only have another minute, but we're going to be answering some questions here. The bottom line is every single worldview, including the progressive worldview, has a specific and unique generic mode of spiritual expression. The progressive movement is in danger of not recognizing what our mode of spiritual expression is, because we've gotten trapped in trying to reject the whole thing as a manipulative, condescending, ridiculous mythology. And it isn't true. There is such a thing as genuine spirituality. It's our responsibility to come to understand what that is. And the sixth paradigm, mode of spiritual expression, is what they call radical monism. It comes from Socrates and Plato. It has to do with understanding that our entire universe, our entire physical universe, is made up of a finite number of ultimately non-divisible units of matter, okay, the quantum fields, and that there's a bonding phenomenon that bonds together every single one of those with every other single one. It is a unitive phenomenon in the cosmos. We as human beings are evolving a faculty by means of which we can directly and experientially discern that unitive phenomenon. And as a direct result of that experience, we can know what human conduct is either harmonious with or disharmonious to the natural order of being in our universe. That is natural law. That is what undergirds the entire United States Constitution. And it's something that we have to come to understand. And we have to mobilize from this point of view and work with the other people, the indigenous people of our world, that understand this process. Okay? So that's the reason that the Lakota people are speaking out now, trying to share this vision. That is why we have to organize and work with the progressive elements inside the various religious orders and denominations and churches and synagogues and temples around the country, and use that as an organizing base in those districts to rise up and organize the people around them in those counties and in those states and take control of this government that was founded in the concept of natural law, that understands that, and not allow the reactionaries to try to take that away from us. Okay? That's all I've got to say right now. We'll answer the questions.
Please stay up there. Wasn't that phenomenal?